Hello and welcome back to Continental Club Extra, where we show Premier League fans exactly what they're missing from across the continent. This episode is all about AC Milan, and we've got McCubs and Henry for your viewing pleasure. But we're going to kick off the show by actually hearing from an AC Milan fan, Saturnian13 on Twitter, real name Saj, and these were his thoughts about what is going wrong for Milan right now.
Milan's issues are deep, but briefly, half of these should be resolved with the return of Maignan. Milan's backup goalkeeper, Tatarusanu, for example, before the derby, had conceded 11 from the last 13 shots on target. So unsurprisingly, it's pretty demoralizing for both the team and the defense, knowing that no matter how good you play, the next shot on target is pretty much a goal conceded. For example, also last year, Milan had the best defense in Serie A, but 10 of the 31 goals we conceded, so 1/3 came in just the 6 games that Mike was not available. That said, even Pioli has big blame in this. He was praised before for being one of the rare coaches in Italy that trusted the youth, but now he seems to have reverted back to the old, stubborn, traditional Italian coach that prefers his favourites like Krunic and Pobega Gabbia over the likes of Vranks, Chio and Adli, who keep impressing the little minutes that they get. Pioli also has been sacked for much less before in his previous clubs. So unless he turns things around against Torino and Spurs next, seems like it's the end of the line for him as well.
So there we have it, hearing from Saj. He's a little bit worried about Pioli's long-term future, putting a lot of the responsibility on their current form on the absence of Mike Maignan, which I think is a great shout. We'll get onto that later. But Henry, considering where they were going into the World Cup, they were actually in a pretty good position. This has been a disastrous few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it kind of kicked off losing that 2-0 lead over Roma in the dying moments. Then we see them lose to Torino, draw with Lecce, get smashed by Lazio and Sassuolo. And I think losing 1-0 to Inter actually is a lot kinder on them than how it could have been. And if you look at it statistically, they maybe could have got beaten more than the scoreline suggested. Hardly tested Onana in the goal. I think they only generated about 0.2 XG, which is kind of, it shows where this AC Milan side is right now. So yeah, it's a really disappointing place for Milan to be. But I do feel kind of sorry for Pioli. I think their big transfer in the summer, Ketelaere, really hasn't caught fire, has it? And that's really sad. I thought he was great. You know, you're representing former Club Brugge today, who are sinking under Scotty Parker. But yeah, that's a different manager and having a tough time. But yeah, it's I feel a bit sorry for them. And then they've had some big injuries recently. Tomori Hernandez, we saw that back line against Inter Milan. It was there for the taking, wasn't it? Sort of Gabbia, Kier coming in. He hasn't played a lot of football recently, has he? And as I said it on Continental Club, Tatarusanu is not a suitable replacement for Maignan in goal, and I think Sarge explained it perfectly right there. The period last season where they conceded goals with him between the sticks, and this season too, they need that solidity behind the defence to just provide a bit of reassurance for the whole side going forward. It really does start at the keeper sometimes. We saw that with Kepa when he was struggling at Chelsea at early points. So it's a common problem, and yeah, I think Pioli will be desperate for Mike Maignan to come back, Hernandez too. And it looks like it's creating more uncertainty in the side because Rafa Leao's contract, for example, is flip-flap between will he stay, will he go. It now looks like the bigger this malaise goes on, the more it's likely he's going to be looking at interest from elsewhere because he will be a wanted man. What I will say is that they can still turn it around. They can still get back into that top 4 race with a good run of results. It's not as if they've got a ton of horrible fixtures coming up. Torino at home, Monza away, Atalanta tricky game, but yeah, Fiorentina, who are burning hot and cold this season, Salernitana. So if they give Pioli a bit of time, which I think they should, then I do think the results are there for Milan to build on. I think maybe the Champions League against Tottenham is almost a write-off at this point in time, although who knows what Tottenham will do. But yeah, Pioli does need to start getting his decisions right with his teams, though, because some of the lineups he's been putting out are baffling.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the weekend, the 3-5-2 really didn't work. Junior Messias in midfield. They couldn't get a hold of Calhanoglu at all. Rafa Leao being on the bench, their key threat last season, their main man. And I know he's got that contract dispute, as you rightly pointed out, but surely they got to use Rafa Leao, and especially when it was Origi playing up front alongside Giroud, who's barely played any football, barely had any impact whatsoever. Did get an excellent goal against the Sassuolo a couple of weeks ago, but just hasn't really been able to get going because of his injuries.
The idea of playing Giroud and Origi up front doesn't make sense in this modern time. That's two big lump centre forwards up there. Giroud is quite clearly capable by himself. We've seen him do it week in, week out this season. Baffling.
Yeah, absolutely. And a few key players losing form at just the wrong moment as well. I think Theo Hernandez has really struggled on the back of the World Cup as well. He's being questioned about his work rate as well, which is just not what you want as a professional footballer. Let's get into how to save Milan's season, McCubs, because I put this on Twitter, and at Menes18, at MC Ifru, and at New Age Purist all said sack Pioli. That feels quite dramatic, but are we getting into that territory?
Yeah, I think it feels very dramatic, actually. I'm not against the idea that Pioli maybe isn't the manager to take Milan to the next level. I think what he has done for the club is remarkable, though, and I think that gives him a lot of credit in the bank. Like Henry was saying, I mean, Milan, I still expect Milan to finish in the top four. They're 1 point off Lazio in fourth. They're 2 points off Roma in third. They're still only 5 points behind Inter in second. Obviously, the title is long gone now, and the fact that they've dropped a further 10 points behind Napoli in just 1 month is pretty concerning, for sure. But at the same time, Pioli won a title last season whilst battling a similar kind of injury crisis to the one that he has now. Obviously, Maignan has been a bigger miss than anyone was last season. We know that. But yeah, I think you have to give him a lot of credit for what he's done on a pretty limited budget compared to the kind of money that Juve has been spending, compared to the kind of money that Inter have been spending in the last few years. So I don't think there is grounds to sack him at this point of the season unless you can get a world-class coach in right now, and I kind of doubt that. Actually, I would still give him the chance. I think he deserves to have a crack at getting Milan back into the top four, because I think I would still back him. I think there's still enough quality, especially when players come back, for them to to usurp the likes of Atalanta and Lazio for sure. But come the summer, I think if the club is planning on making significant investments in the squad, I would be looking at options for sure. With the likes of Thomas Tuchel and Mauricio Pochettino, still looking for work. I think if Milan do want to, go to that next level, be a club that's challenging in the Champions League, challenge on 3 fronts every single season, then I think those kind of managers are the ones that they should be looking at, especially if they want to, shift more deadwood and build build on the youth that they have in that squad. Both of those managers, I think, are ideal. That's probably the way that I would go about it. I think Pioli has done too much for this club to be sacked mid-season. I can't remember the last time Milan actually did that, getting rid of a coach mid-season. I think there's enough there. I think that the thing is, I think once Maignan comes back, which is relatively soon, right? That defence is still performing pretty well. Even with Tomori out, they're still kind of doing the job that they were last season. However, I'm with you guys. I think the team he put out for that Inter game on the weekend was baffling. To not get a shot on target. Did they even have a shot in the box in a Milan derby? It's bad. I think this, in many ways, this is his low point of the last few years. To lose in that manner in a Milan derby, leaving Leao out, deciding to go with a midfield 5, with Tonali, Krunic and Macias. What are you doing? What are you doing against an Inter side that have played, a similar system to that, at least in midfield, for recent memory, essentially. They were always going to lose out, and it's pretty mad as well. They were completely dominated, possession-wise. And I was kind of looking at, Inter's average possession this season, because I kind of assumed that Inter are just more of a possession-based side than Milan. They basically averaged the same possession this season. So it really was, it wasn't, it shouldn't have been expected the way that Inter dominated them, despite the injuries to Milan. I think if he'd stuck to his guns and just, put them out and told them to play the way they know how to play, it probably would have been a tighter game. I know it's only 1-0, but on the balance of play, yeah, Inter definitely should have had more. But yeah, I would say Pioli, stick with him for now. But in the summer, I think there is, I think there's the possibility of changes in multiple areas of that squad.
Yeah, the thing that makes me a little bit worried about his long-term future is that they have thought about replacing him before. In lockdown in 2020, and of course at that stage he'd only been in since the previous autumn, I believe. So obviously his job security wasn't the same level. He hadn't won the title. He hadn't even got them back in the Champions League at that stage. And they are through to the Champions League knockouts as well, which is quite a bit significant achievement for a club like Milan, which haven't made major inroads into the Champions League for quite a while. So that slightly worries me. And also the fact he's not really ever been a long-term manager. He's never lasted more than 100 games in any of his 13 previous jobs. He didn't even last 100 games in his 2 previous roles combined, Inter and Fiorentina. So this is a guy that's been known to make, a very good impression in a short amount of time. But in terms of building a dynasty, or in terms of, building a side that can dominate for year on year, he's really struggled to do that so far. But at the same time, it will make a big difference when those injuries come in. That's what Saturnian 13 said. I mean, in this game, we've talked about Tomori, but they're also missing Benacer, who's probably their outstanding midfielder. And, as Saturnian pointed out, there are these young players, particularly Yacine Adli, who, is immensely talented and is not getting much of a look in behind someone like Pobega. So, Henry, okay, we've got to this season, maybe stick with it, but maybe he looks at his tactics in particular in the next few games. But in the summer, it feels like once again they'll be looking for that right winger. They'll need that striker probably coming in. There are numerous areas of that side.
It's true. I think you have to be brutal sometimes, and they really should have made a decision to go up and upgrade the squad in the summer and recognise the fact that on expected points last season, they battled through to that title win. And if they want to go to the next level, you do need to upgrade. You kind of look at some of the way promoted sides are pretty harsh on the players that get them up into the top divisions sometimes. I think maybe AC Milan should have done that to really capitalise on their momentum. Once again, we've seen their right wing position be a problem. I mean, the game at the weekend, Calabria were starting at the wing back role. We saw Salamakis off the bench. Neither really are elite players at the very top level of the game. But to be honest, I mean, that Chelsea right wing position is quite stacked. So maybe someone like Hudson-Odoi, who we've seen go to Bayer Leverkusen this year in search of minutes, maybe he could be an interesting prospect. Maybe they could go in again for Pulisic and Ziyech if it looks like they're not getting any minutes at all down the back end of the season, which looks increasingly likely. So yeah, there will be some kind of bargains out there to be had. If we've seen how the kind of impact that Lookman's been able to have going over into Serie A and absolutely excelling for Atalanta, then yeah, I think there's other guys in the Premier League they could definitely be interested in, but they have to sort out that right winger position. And I think bringing in a younger forward to complement either Giroud or Origi up front, because like I said before, you can't have 2 similar guys like that sort of dovetailing off each other, particularly with the Ketelaere struggling to make any impact himself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the striker one's a good point, actually. It probably doesn't feel like the key issue this summer, but I think it will be in 12 months' time, so they need to get ahead of it, really, because Giroud's, 36, Origi's continually plagued by injuries, and someone like Gonzalo Ramos of Benfica, I think he'll have massive suitors this summer. He scored 18 goals in 28 games this season, but could they get involved with someone like him? What about someone like Jonathan David as well, who's just so consistent over at Lille, can play in a variety of positions, can actually play off the right as well. I don't think he's going to be the top of many people's wish list when Osimhen Vlahovic might be on the move this summer as well, so he could enter the equation, of course. But De Ketelaere is an interesting one. He's only got 680 league minutes and 1 league start since October the 1st, 0 goals and 0 assists, but his underlying numbers suggest there is something there. I think only Benacer is creating more chances than him, which is actually crazy that Benacer is their most creative player in that side. So there are a number of issues for Milan to sort out. McCubs, if you had to get your crystal ball out, are they finishing the top 4?
I think so, yeah. But I do agree with what Sadra was saying. I think Pioli needs to put more trust in his young players. Like someone like Yacine Adli, who you were saying, this is a guy who was running games for a really historically bad Bordeaux side, one of the worst Bordeaux sides in history, for 2 years. And yet he's not being trusted as a number 10 in this Milan team. Brahim Diaz didn't even play in the last game, did he either? And like you say, De Ketelaere, again, I know he's not produced, but he's not been given the chance to. He really hasn't. Yeah, I think he does need to be backed, especially when that right hand side isn't great. I know that's not his preferred position, but there is space in that forward line for him. There's ways of getting around that. But yes, I think they will finish top 4. I think Pioli, I know people say that he's stubborn, but he's he's had to be pragmatic at multiple times during his Milan tenure, and I think he will see sense.
And there we have it. There we have it. And the Rafa Leao contract situation rolls on as well. So many issues for Pioli to contend with. Guys, what would you do to save Milan's season? Should they sack Pioli? Let us know in the comments down below. If you've enjoyed this video, remember to like it, leave a comment and subscribe to EuroFootball Daily. And we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.